Welcome, everybody, to the first of many Wednesday shows. I know I fucked up the timing with that intro music, and I know that Ursinity and Flubb can't hear it, but they have heard it, and it's pretty absurd. I'm Cyphus. I'm sitting here with Wazoo.
Hi, that's the best thing I've ever heard is this intro music.
I'm sitting here with, is it the Grandmaster Flubb? Do I have the Grand Wazoo and the Grandmaster Flubb?
You get some type of grand title when you join my show. Blue is Grand Blue, which doesn't really work.
Grand Blue.
Yeah, very blue.
And also joining us today is everybody's favorite crafting podcaster, Ursinity.
Thank you. Yes, Today we're going to talk about paper mache. Big fan.
Yeah. I can see you guys. You're kind of the Bob Ross of Dota, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the 6 people apparently that has not at some point or another changed their name to Bob Ross on Steam. So I guess that qualifies me.
Yeah.
So if you don't act like Bob Ross, you are Bob Ross.
I mean, Bob Ross, he needs to escape from his wonderful life of painting. So when he goes on Steam, he's he probably cosplays as me or something.
It's almost the exact opposite of positive projection. It's like a real scrutinizing view of the world, and then Bob Ross comes to you, kind of as your Ghost of Christmas Past to kind of rein it in.
I mean, to be as positive as that guy, you got to just be a terrible person somewhere. You got to get it out. So he'd probably be a Dota player, and he'd be like, "Yo, me mid," and then he'd be yelling about how much he hates Peru or something. That's the Bob Ross I like to think of.
Yeah. If you were an alien who came to Earth and only initially first interacted with the human race through Dota 2, that's what you would think Bob Ross was. Is just an angry racist guy yelling at Peruvians.
Very true.
There's so much cultural diffusion in Dota that I do not want that to be the first thing that anything that comes to this planet sees. They're just like, these people hate each other. It's they wouldn't be wrong, I guess, but we just don't want them to get that much information about us that quickly. I think Dota boils it down to its most basest elements.
And they'd get rid of us based on who is good at the game and who isn't. So all the people that would survive would be the people that you wouldn't want to survive. And
it'd be all those 5K assholes that are just always no, we're gonna punish you, or we're gonna be you don't deserve this, or get cancer. That type of asshole that just exists in Dota. Yeah, that'd be horrible, man.
I would live a short life.
Yeah, I'm definitely out when that's the metric for survival is Dota skill.
I hope they bring new servers if aliens come. I'm good. They're just I turn over my family, everything, my car, my keys. Just let me play on good alien servers with hyper fast internet, intelligent players. You got me. I'll do whatever works you want.
Korean servers?
Yeah, pretty much. But the
Wazoo
Korean servers are really bad, right? Aren't they?
They don't have them anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when they did, they had 6 ping, and I don't know about the skill of the players, but having 6 ping means it's pretty sweet.
Why is the internet so good there? And so
it's a small country that's super modernized, and they have good infrastructure for that kind of stuff.
They're smaller than Japan, right? But they have a lot of people, and they also, I don't know if they have more than Japan necessarily, but they are also as technologically advanced as Japan, right? And they rely on imports and export of technological goods as much. They're huge
I generally, as a good rule of thumb, I would not bring up Korea and Japan in the same sentence and expect anybody to be happy with you. But I just know they have really fast internet. I don't claim to be an expert on anything other than their pop music and dramas.
I think that makes you an expert for the social media aspect, dude. Because every single time we get on Twitter, it's oh man, it's so and so's birthday, or these 2 people kissed on.
That did happen. I was very excited during our team practice the other day because Chao Lu and Jose Ho kissed on their episode of We Got Married for the first time.
And this brings us to the point of the podcast, everybody. We've trapped you into a K-pop drama podcast.
Welcome.
So I guess
that's the kind of guy I am, I guess.
K-pop Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I think our listenership would not be too happy. Although anybody that still follows me on Twitter,
we just explode
those
overnight.
Yeah. I guess on that note, we should probably describe what this podcast is and will eventually become. Somebody that's not me.
All right, so I think I'm going to give the rapid fire answer to that, which is we have no idea right now.
Right, that's good. That was not the answer I was looking for, but that is an answer, I suppose.
I mean, we have a vague collection of an idea. It's close. I mean, right now, kind of what we've been envisioning is a roundtable with the four of us. We're the sanest members of DotP, right?
Oh, by far,
debatably, but yes.
And
wait, who's more sane than the four of us? Like,
I
you
mean,
think Roland or Proud are more sane than one of the other ones?
Oh, come on.
That is fair. When you do compare like our competition, we definitely are.
Can I have a metric here? Cthulhu role playing game has a sanity marker that when you fall before below a certain number, you start to suffer the effects of the sanity loss. I felt like maybe I've suffered one sanity loss at one point, but I built up my sanity over time to a point where I'm good to go.
Sure, and you don't feel like Roland or Proud is
not just yet. They haven't built it up yet. You know what I mean? So like maybe one more huge insane blow if they saw like a ghost or something, or like Medusa like real life popped up in Greg's shower and like stone cased him.
Yeah. Like, also like and you don't have to be incredibly
sane
to be sane relative to those two also. So like you can have pretty low sanity, but in comparison, your sanity's great. Like you're doing solid.
Yeah.
So we've secluded them over on Proudland, as I believe it's being called. What's funny is they think that the two of them are gonna manage to do a really educational show, and I think I give it like 2 weeks before it's completely off the rails. That's my estimate.
Potentially in a good way.
That could be our show for a while. Is just see how that's going and just like
provide
a weekly review of their show.
Let us be clear here that Proudlands, that's like our Guantanamo. That's where we send our to people who have had too many terrorist threats. They got to go over there for a while.
Yeah,
I think of it like Suicide Squad, where it's like, all right, you guys are a little off your rockers, but you guys can do good, and you guys just have to like not be with everybody else, but like you guys can have your thing over there, and like just don't kill anybody, and you're safe. Okay.
And for every show you do, we'll take a little time off the sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk about what we envision the show to be. Like each of us, because I know we all have different ideas. Because this idea is one that's been floating around in some form from we wanted to do a Friday slot with different hosts rotating and stuff. And then we got the idea for the Wednesday slot, and it felt good as a place where you can just kind of talk about what's going on in the game, but not necessarily be confined to any certain topic. You don't necessarily have to be overly educational. You can kind of like BS a little bit and just kind of talk about what's going on. A place where like talking about this roster shuffle might be okay for a bit to talk about and like a pontificate on, whereas it wouldn't be appropriate on a more formatted show.
And I'm down to have like an open dialogue while we got the four of us, because I think I've talked to like each of you individually at some point, like about what iterations the show could be, because I mean, if we're being straight up, we're here because like we lost the Dot Pro show. KBBQ moving on to bigger and better things.
No surprise there, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, like when you get someone like that in your organization, you just kind of know that they're gonna
move on,
and if they'll create content with
quickly.
you, it's like awesome. Let's do it.
Yeah, and then
you don't question anything.
Woodshrews going off to be a doctor.
Nerd.
Yeah, what a nerd. He's gonna have the
no
most
excuse
miserable
there,
6
however.
years of his life, and then a really great like 40. So, but I'm down to have an open dialogue as far as like what we kind of initially talked about, and because we wanted to initially go for pro coverage, and like you were saying, Wazoo, like it's painful, it's hard to keep up with the scene, right? I think is what you were talking about. Like it's good to cover certain things at certain times.
Like it's okay to like cover things, but like, are you there watching the moment at 3 a.m. every single morning when you have to do like go work and go to school the next day or something? It's kind of hard, you know what I mean? Like to stay as up to date as you would like to be. It's hard to book relevant guests. It's hard to stay kind of on the edge you want to be, and we don't have those type of connections like we were talking about. In terms of like the Jack had with being there is what I mean. Like he's literally at every event, which we just can't afford to do at this point. Although we'd love to be there. You know what I mean?
He gets that kind of behind the scenes look.
Yeah, I think we all kind of agreed that, like, as much as we, like, I know I follow the pro scene, like, to a decent amount, like anybody that browses Reddit and watches tournaments and stuff, but I think we all kind of agreed that, like, it wasn't within our wheelhouse of specialty, and we didn't want to put out a product that we weren't, like, super happy with, and, if you wanted to, like, if there's important stuff, obviously we'll be discussing on this show or on any of the shows, but I think especially myself, like with Theory Crafting Thursday, as much as like as nice as it is to have the formatting and like the semi-rigid formatting we have of like, you do the intro, you do a segment, then you talk about your combo, you have a break, then you play the game, come back, you talk about your combo, then you're done. That format is not doesn't accommodate like a free form discussion like we're gonna have on this show, and that's my real intention with this show, and why I'm like so excited to do it, is these kind of roundtable, very free form discussionary shows, especially with this combination of hosts with different specialties and different skill levels and different perspectives on things.
Some lower than others, really some far lower than others. No, I'm joking.
You want to whip out the MMRs today?
Whoa, not on the first episode, buddy. You got to take me on like 3 episodes before you ask that question.
You can talk about mine. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, of course you are, dude. You display that for everybody to see, you gross pervert.
I mean, I just like to be open and honest with everybody about like how good I am.
Oh, this is such bullshit. There's like I'm not even joking. Like 3 weeks ago, I was like, I don't care about my MMR. I'm gonna display it at whatever level it is. I'm not hiding it like everyone else is. Like whenever they dip down to a certain point, and then Ursy's like, well, yeah, of course, because you're the highest right now. And then, of course, when he starts getting higher, he displays both of them like so badly. And
I've had mine.
Oh, I'm just so great with the world.
Oh,
I've had mine displayed for like literal year. Like since Source 2's come out, I have not done anything other than display my solo and party MMR.
I heard you got a Boosterino, my friend.
Yeah, that's the rumor around town.
Yeah, Boosterino.
I heard you can't even beat Roland. So
can I like? I've owned up to this. I'm perfectly comfortable with saying that I've been taken advantage of while intoxicated by another show host. But I feel like this podcast should be a safe place.
Yes,
you're right.
It's a safe place for you. Another thing that I was thinking of, and then I want to get Flubb's thoughts after this, is we could book interviews here that are related to somewhat gaming or Dota or whatever, and still work, and maybe drop someone or drop 2 people and focus that slot, or move it to the...
I was going to say, I don't think, like... I think we wouldn't have... I think you could get people to come on the show. We haven't.
So, like, I just wanted to clarify my earlier statement saying we didn't have the connections. Like, we definitely have the connections to get interviews. We just don't to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and... Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Flubb.
No, you're good. I was thinking that, like, personally for me, I'm one of those guys... I would almost call myself a pub player. Because, like... Yeah, I play on teams all the time and stuff like that, but in general, whenever I look at games, I'm looking at like the general mechanics of some type of game coming out. I generally don't look at, like, I'll look at like bans and picks, but I'm not going to look at games and be like, okay, this is how you need to play this differently here, because generally, if you're going to be playing, you need to like learn that as you're playing it, and you can take skills over, but it's better to like see you actually doing it and seeing people react to it, so you get like muscle memory down. So for me as a player, like to like talk about things that generally I kind of don't have any business talking about, like the like if you're going to talk about, let's say, Misery and how he's been doing with his team and how the relationship is going with their team, it's like, yeah, I respect the guy. I think he's a good player, just like every pro. But if I were to like comment on the social implications, it's like that's not what I want. What I'm here to like tell people, and I feel like that's not really what any of us are here to tell people. You know, you can kind of get that yourself, and it's cool to talk about that stuff, and we can like talk about the important stuff, like people switching teams.
Right.
But
what the fuck do we know, really, when it comes down to it at the end of the day?
Right. Like, why are we speculating about someone's life? Like, I don't know. I've never been into that, like, style of, like, podcasting. So I think that, like, for everyone who's, like, hoping to see that in the future, I'm sorry. I just don't feel like, personally, I want to go down that direction. And maybe we might switch it in the future. We might just keep two guys that are more into that direction. But I feel like as a whole, I don't want to speak for you guys, but it's kind of, we're all in that mode, right? We're all here because we love to play the game and we want to talk about playing the game.
So I didn't realize, or rather, I think this is the first time that mid-podcast we've just all agreed that we're going to fire Flubb. Because,
Yep.
Officially abandoning our show. Like, yeah, when we find 2 competent people that can talk about things, like, they can have the Wednesday show. That is not helpful, my friend.
Yeah, well, like, I'm going with Flubb. I stand behind Flubb, and we'll take my show and we'll go somewhere else. So up yours, up yours, guys'. Let's go, Flubb.
Exactly. Like, well, not exactly, but like the thing is, like, I don't want us to become something that's like dishonest or like speculating about someone's personal life. Like that just seems kind of weird.
Drama.
Yeah.
Boy, I could have a drama show.
We all know all know and love how much you giggle over drama, but
we don't get
going to be called
Thursday
Mama
show.
Ursi's Drama Hour, and that's going to be our Sunday slot. We're going to put that at 2 p.m. so everyone can get home after church and just sit in their moo-moos and watch it.
I mean, yeah.
And eat some KFC or whatever they have.
It's interesting to me because like there are so many wonderful listeners that listen to all the shows and have a good time, and they know me of course through the Thursday show, but they may not follow on Twitter, or they may not talk on Discord or whatever, and more power to you. Go for it, enjoy our content the way you want to enjoy it. But they don't people may not be aware of the fact that like I'm a huge drama fiend outside of the podcast, because we can't talk about drama on the Thursday show, for instance, because it's not within our format. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like that would be a random weird thing to do. But yes, I'm quite the drama fiend. Both, as a Korean pop and drama addict, I guess would be the word. I fiend all that drama and Dota drama. I love it. It's my lifeblood. God bless. But yeah, so I'm excited for that on this show.
So there's going to be some drama we can discuss though, like when we get solid facts that we can make points about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can just wildly speculate and be horribly incorrect. I'm fine with that
like
too.
with Flubb, like talking about people's like personal life, like I want to keep it to Dota too, and like
I guess.
I guess I'm with Ursi a little bit too. Like if something interesting comes up dramatically and you guys want to talk about it, I'm down to wildly speculate as well. I mean, in fact, this brings up an interesting point, like something that Roland and I were talking about not too long ago, which is that players exist in the public eye in the way, maybe not to the extent that celebrities do in modern pop culture and Hollywood, on television and music, but they do exist in the public eye and unfortunately that is kind of what comes with it, is people, because you're an interesting person for whatever reason, are going to talk about what's going on. And if it gets reported, it gets reported. Like I'm down to.
Is this a healthy idolization?
Totally. I mean, it's the reality, in my opinion. Anyway, Cyphus, continue.
No, I'm with you. I think it's dead on. It's just that's kind of reality. Is once you're in the public eye, you're going to be open. You've opened yourself up for the discussion of it. If you don't want to be in the public eye, then don't. Unfortunately, one of the things
these guys
you can't
didn't
do,
want to be in the public eye. They just wanted to play a game.
But they want to play Dota 2 professionally.
And that's where it changes?
Because
I think Dota 2 players have more involvement in ways than some NASCAR drivers, which is hard to see.
If you just wanted to play the game, you could keep working your normal life. You could be the best at the game.
You could be Badman. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a good example. Like, nobody knows Badman. Like, they're just like, oh, he's just really good at Dota 2. And, like, he had that one time where he was almost 9K. But then you have people like one of today's big news was Kaka, a Chinese player. I forget what team he plays for, but he was the first 9K that primarily played support. Or just support player in general, like for his team, whatever team it was. I'm sorry. Also, all the Chinese teams got dropped recently, so maybe he's not on a team officially. But he had 9K today, and like one of the top things on Reddit was about how his girlfriend posted on Twitter about how she was unhappy because he wasn't spending time with her, and like she was worried for his health and stuff. So like that's a good example of the stuff where like this guy's just like a great player and hit 9K, but still that like private stuff, like he's in the private eye or the public eye, like that kind of stuff comes out, and like people are gonna pay attention to his relationship status with his girlfriend, or like, oh, F and G cut his hair, like stuff like that. Like obviously that's not drama.
So
that's just
weird.
Like,
Well, I you know what I'll say is
maybe it's just because I'm an older male, but that's just weird behavior for me.
Yeah, I agree with Wazoo. I think that's why we get along so well. Is because like when you look at this, like cross my fingers, if I was ever to go pro, which I don't think that's happening anytime soon or ever. But the thing is like if you ever get to that point, like I'm there to play at the top tier Dota. Like if people really care about my haircut, that's fine, I guess. They talk about it. But like that also kind of influences you, and like, you know, you get kicked from a team and they're like, oh, is this because this guy sucks, you know? And it's like, man, that's just like that's like rubbing salt in the wound. I hate when people like badmouth people on social media sites and stuff like that. Like as
it's like
something
all
is
Reddit's
happening.
become, right? Is a gigantic like dream catcher. It's like a shit catcher, not a dream catcher. It just catches all the shit, and whatever's the best shit gets upvoted to the top shit, and then there's just shit.
Yeah, I for one can't wait for Flubb to go pro so that I can like unleash all of his drama and like.
I'm gonna definitely manage him like Rocky gets managed in Rocky, and I'm just gonna like I'm gonna push him to his limits. You know, I'll call him an Italian
Rocky's
stallion.
manager die at the end or like the middle or something?
Oh man, I couldn't.
Whatever happens to happen happens. You know, to make sure Flubster's like playing for Sad Boys or whatever someday.
I know you say that like you'd be wanting to play the top tier Dota, and I get that is a huge element of the draw of the position, but one of the draw, unfortunately, in modern society, where if you want to make money, like or if money's going to be involved, then people are probably going to be interested in it. I mean, it's what draws us. Like, it's all about primitive urges. Like, money draws us to it. Entertainment draws us to it. Drama, because of primitive concepts and emotions, draws us to it. If you want to play Dota 2 professionally, what is going to come with it is being in the public eye. And I would equate it to, like, when you think about, like, a little kid, let's say a 9-year-old who watches baseball or basketball or football or hockey on TV and wants to grow up and do that. There are it's like primitive emotion,
like Michael Jordan early on in Space Jam when it's like fly like an eagle, and he just like keeps sinking shots.
I don't think that the 9-year-old kid, say what you will about kids, I don't think the 9-year-old kid is thinking to himself or herself, I want to play that professional sport so I can be playing at the top tier of that professional sport.
They just start playing, and they play more.
They play because they like it, and I think there's an element of, I want to be on TV like this guy. I want to be...
There's probably some predetermined aptitude that makes you enjoy it as well, in a weird way. And if you look at pianists and stuff, like early on, that are just crazy, like... You got to have some aptitude to be like a 6-year-old kid playing Beethoven and shit. Like, I don't care what you tell me. Like, to be like...
Well, I'm talking more about
like really abusive parents. That also helps.
Yeah. I'm talking more
about
I
mean, like sometimes it helps. I guess
I'm talking more about the motivations behind pushing people to pursue those types of things, and I think at their purest, in their most primitive aspects, like some people do end up craving that, not just being able to participate in the top tier competitive sense.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, because of that, those things end up going hand in hand.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, like, back to, like, the kind of initial topic about, like, at the end of the day, if you are doing something for the public, like, whether you're playing, whether you're competing in esports or competing in real sports, like, whether you want to be a private person or not, like, you are performing for the public, albeit, like, under a pseudonym and behind a computer screen, like, you're in the public eye by definition. Like, that's just part of the job. So whether it's, somebody like Kaká hitting 9K and being a pro player and having people talk about his relationship with his girlfriend, or whether it's like that San Francisco 49ers quarterback that didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, whatever his name is, Colin Kaepernick or something.
Yeah.
Like,
how
he's
dare
in the public eye by definition. Like, maybe... he may not have wanted to be in the public eye, but, like, he plays in the NFL. Like, he is in the public eye by definition. So that kind of stuff, like, is just the reality of the situation. Like,
yeah, but doesn't that stuff, like, bother the shit out of you? Like,
it's part of the job. Don't do it if you don't want it.
If a guy didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, like, he could have, like, had, like, a rough day or something that day. Maybe his dog died.
He's never done it.
He was doing it for a political stance, but regardless.
Oh, okay. Well, shows you how much I like watch that shit. But like,
I watched Dota. And okay, it wasn't always like this, boys. And I'll take you back to a time where people weren't like screaming fangirls at a fucking Backstreet Boys concert for
was
esports
it when people made no money playing Dota?
Yeah.
Yes,
it was,
and it was back in the times of StarCraft 2 when people first started getting
pure,
that.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going like grandpappy here or anything. It's just like, people deserve their space too, and I could tell by looking some of those people in the eye, they were just like fucking tired of getting walked up to after like a long trip.
You know what? You know why?
And it's understandable. Like, people get tired, and then like you walk up and you're like, "Hey," and he's like, "How was he?" What like Sumail getting ran into at the end of TI, and he looks super tired, and it's like, people comment on that and say, oh, he wasn't reactive and he seemed kind of mean or whatever. And it's like, he's tired, fuck. Can they not be normal people too?
No. Well, unfortunately.
Like, they have to be on all the time?
Yeah, unfortunately.
And be really good at Dota?
Yes, I think it's one of those things that comes with the job.
Not many athletes can do that, even in real sports. You have your Muhammad Ali's. You have your one guy with the hocky puck.
But you're talking about people
every
that
shot.
are playing,
Wayne Gretzky's. You got your Gretzky's.
Playing a game for
you got your Tiger Woods until he did all those women on his wife. And she hit it chased him with a golf club.
They're playing a game for a living. Part of what comes with playing a game for a living is people being interested in that game, and by association being interested in you.
Yeah, well, it's just like any other public. Like, I mean, if you're an actor, who is it? Kevin Spacey, that is somehow he has managed to be a super private person. Nobody knows anything about his private life.
He's a fucking robot or something, as far as I'm concerned, man.
I mean, and if you're really dedicated to it, maybe only playing online tournaments if you're that uncomfortable with people knowing knowing who you are, what you look like, or whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you want to be the big time and be in the public eye in terms of your play, then your human being is also going to be in the public eye. That's just, I feel that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
And it's kind of naive to think oh man, I want to be a pro player, but I want nobody to know anything about me. Maybe if you're
that's okay.
Tier 2 player, a support player, but Miracle, people just they're not going to see a guy that's the best in the world and be oh, I don't care about his name or what he studied in college or what his family's like. People like that kind of stuff. That's just the human experience.
He probably studied kicking the shit out of noobs in college.
Which is okay to have. I don't say all fandom or all people following people is fine, but I guess when people speculate about this guy must be an awful person because this short window that I met him, he was not pleasant and cheerful and a nice guy. This is why everything that's wrong with this person. That freaking sucks, man.
Yeah.
If I met even a normal star, this happens all the time to normal stars where they're all right, I want to just have a moment with my family. I will sign stuff afterwards. Just let me eat my dinner, talk to my child, and then move on. And it's people still don't respect that space, and that is something that has a real chance of coming over in esports. It's not something now because they generally don't get mobbed on a daily basis, but if esports grows and it keeps growing and growing and growing, and it hopefully comes as big as an actual regular sport, like basketball, football, anything that's really popular right now, it would be nice to not carry over some of the bad that comes with it. And not even some of the bad from the fan perspective. Also, it'd be also good to have some not carried over from the caster perspective. One of the things when I used to watch Heroes of Newerth that always bothered me so much was there's a guy named Breaky CPK. He was a good caster and he did a lot of good things, but he always said at the end of the day this happened, or at the end of the fight this is why it failed. And it's he had all these wrap up things that it's okay, that's fine that you have that cue, that way to get through it, but it becomes robotic after a while. And I feel because we're growing, why not try to strive to have something better than what it's been before?
I guess I just don't know that it is. I don't feel that element of it is worse, because I see that as kind of just unfortunately what goes with the territory.
That's a draw, you mean? A huge draw?
Yeah, I think it is. I think because I'll be honest, I think you're going to, just like we talk about the 9-year-old, right, who is inspired to do it because they watch it happen on television and they see that as a potential route to positive praise. They maybe Wazoo says, you do start playing super young and you do become super good. I mean, maybe that element of it does inspire some of the better athletes or some of the better competitors in whatever that competition or that game winds up being, that you might not have had access to before. There is, I don't know, I think there's something positive to be said, even if it's from just a capitalistic perspective, to having your Kobe Bryants, right? Kobe Bryant is a star. People are interested in what he's doing on and off the court, and he draws people into that. from a business perspective,
it's more LeBron
that's a good thing.
These days, bro.
Sure.
LeBron James.
Sure. LeBron James.
Yeah.
I mean,
LeBron's
throw in your
king, bro.
fill-in athlete name here, your Michael Jordans. I mean,
your Derek Jeters, your A-Rods.
Yeah.
You're the Grand Wazoo.
Michael Phelps, even.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's just like, I mean, the reality of the situation, right, is that these kind of things are a commonplace within sports or within acting, etc., for good reason, right? Like, it's not like that suddenly, like, all these things just happen to happen, and like people suddenly started to care about the personal lives or about the outside of the game lives, about people in sports or outside of acting, etc. Like, that's just like, it's clearly a formulaic thing that works, and people are interested in the people behind the scenes. And yes, people are always going to take it too far, and fans are going to be annoying, and there's going to be like crazy stalkers, or there's going to be people that like disrupt people going to dinner or whatever. But those are the extreme minority, and like, obviously we're not saying that we want that to happen, but like,
it's an unfortunate side effect of people with fame.
It's
not
just
everyone
gonna
like
happen.
right. Lots of people like Jodie Foster. Not everyone sends her like creepy letters and
or
shoots a president.
tries to shoot. Yeah.
You know, like, there's a difference. There's a line.
Well, and lest we forget, it's fans who pay the bills. I mean, it's the TI is only that big, only pays out that much money, only makes it possible for these guys to continue dedicating themselves and playing the game that they love because fans are willing to dump money into it and give them access to it. Like, unfortunately, part of the social contract that's there is we want to know about you. We want to know how the best Dota 2 players live and eat and sleep and breathe. Like, unfortunately, there are going to be people that want to know even that want to go to those extremes.
It's getting better. The living conditions and everything, that's one thing I kind of want to talk about that I couldn't get into too much on my show, is it seems like players are getting a better rap because players are recognized as that source of talent and draw. You know what I mean? Like, in past games, like, they had StarCraft houses where they would just kind of just house tons of people in this house. It was like some people would be sleeping on the floor, living in Korea, terrible conditions, eating once a day, playing as much as they could, and maybe they wouldn't even have success. And so it was just like back home with you. Now we're seeing with DC, like, they had a pretty good rap according to that Suns fan business letter, if you read that.
I did.
The year wrap up. And all the funds went to them for the TI victory, second place, and they still had salaries and everything, good living environments, and it really paid off. So that focus on the player is definitely here. What do you guys think of like a union or something for players to be further protected, or for talent, for instance, to be protected and get contracted work days? Because don't you think it's a little ridiculous? Some of these people are working 18 hours after being jet lagged, going home, getting 6 hours of sleep, waking up, working 18 hours. They got to be tired, and they're getting paid a flat rate for that. So it's like not entirely legal. Like, I don't know.
I think unions definitely mix up stuff, though. Like, unions are definitely useful for where they're at in society, and I mean, you've
heard the word muttered around esports for a little bit, and it feels like people, like, it's some guy in the back of the room that's just like, well, unionize, and someone's like, hey, who said that? And like looks around, and it's like no one can see who the guy is, and then is that where this is going? I guess if we're gonna hypothesize, I guess I'd do it here and now on DotP midweek podcast. Mid podcast. So what do you guys think?
I mean, sorry, Flubb, you were already making a point. You can go.
No, it's all right. The thing with that I was gonna say was that with unions, like, I feel like it's harder to do that in a global state than it is to do that at, just if it was just confined to the United States, I feel like it would be easier to unionize. But when you're dealing with all these different countries and their practices on how the income is paid, how things work out, like, if you're unionizing, you'd also have to like put spending limits on certain teams. You have to do certain different things that we don't even really know right now. Well, I don't know personally because I'm not a
baseball doesn't have salary caps, I believe.
That's true.
And that's why you get a Yankees situation, though, right? But that doesn't necessarily win you championships.
Also doesn't necessarily hurt you from a business perspective, or even, from a game perspective.
But Dota isn't baseball. What's to stop?
Right.
What's to stop someone from dropping?
Baseball's not football.
10 million, let's say, on the EG squad. Let's say GG folds or whatever, gets absorbed into Twitch, whatever they're planning on doing, and all those guys are free agents. They just pick them up, know they're good enough, and just invest in the team. Boom, they just have that team.
Yeah, and they make money.
Yeah, I mean, they win because money makes money, right? But the nice thing about Dota is that, like, skill level wise, or even like baseball, like, you can invest as much money as you want, but, like, you know, at the end of the day, they're still human beings, so it's not going to necessarily win you TIs. Like Old Secret from last year, everybody was like, man, this is the dream team. It's going to be so good. They're going to win everything. They're, like, going to demolish their opponents. Then they lose, like, they, like, got, like, what, like, top 8 barely, or, like, bottom like 12, 14 or something.
Which one you talking about? Misery Secret?
Necessitate you winning. It just necessitates, like, or I mean, it just means you're gonna have better chances. And I mean, the whole reason we don't have, like, issues like Wazoo was talking about, where, like, people are sleeping on floors, is just because there's more money in Dota than there was in StarCraft. So teams can afford to have a big house in Arizona and fly all their people in, and have a manager and have a coach and have another coach and stuff like that. So that just has to do with money in the scene. Which, I mean, I'm all for more money in the scene. Like, that's just the natural
Obviously,
growth.
it works, right? That whole coach system and them taking good care of the players. That's second place finish. That's very good, right?
Yeah, and I mean, plenty of teams had coaches that, like, did not even get to TI, or, like, you know, got bottom like 12 to 16. But it still is. It's all about money in the scene, right? At the end of the day, it's about, like, you know, we have the money to have coaches, and even the teams that lost, clearly they had the money to have coaches in the first place, right? So, you know, when we talk about the growth of the pro scene, these kinds of things are the very fortunate reality in my mind. And, you know, we have all the hiccups and all the problems that any growing scene has, and, like, yeah, maybe want to unionize, but then some people don't want to unionize, and, you know, that's just it's like growing pains, basically. I mean, in, like, actual, like, human history, we didn't have unions for a very long time, and, like, you know,
and
so
people lost their limbs in machines and were fired, and, like, couldn't work a hoe in the field, and just
like,
died.
All right, buddy, you started today with 5 fingers, now you have 3, and, like, you know, go home. All right, buddy, maybe then we won't hire you tomorrow because you only have 3 fingers, and it turns out you need 5. So, you know, suck it up, buddy. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's growing pains, and hopefully, like, no, like, Arteezy is gonna have his fingers cut off by Kamel, or whatever the guy that runs Secret, his name is.
Kamal.
Kamal, yeah. And, like, that's
so,
just,
like, a Turkish billionaire's son, I think.
Yeah.
Or something.
And yeah, he's something like that, or maybe he just is the billionaire. I think
he is also a billionaire in relation, but his dad's like a huge, like, the biggest businessman in Turkey or something like that.
Regardless, I know in the Chinese scene they have, like, an esports, like, committee or something or other that, like, is a lot more involved with the pro teams and the pro players and such, and they're more, like, official, I guess, if you use the term. But that's because esports is more entrenched in China compared to in America, where it's less of a common thing.
We could be
and there's less American teams. So,
get Barack Obama on the phone, dude.
Yeah,
I'll be like,
right
holla, holla, Barack Obama. And they'll be like, oh, why are you calling me?
If he answered to that, I would probably.
I told you not to call me here.
Not after last time.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess to wrap the whole thing up, maybe that, to get back to our original point,
I like the growing pains summation.
Well,
that's good to me. That makes me be like, okay, because we're gonna have these bumps along the road, and you got to realize we're mixing Twitch culture, where it's just like saying stupid shit, copy and pasted over and over, and then you, like, throw them all into an arena, and you see, like, dumb signs get held up, and you want to punch the guy in the head, and you see the head that can be punched, and you feel a little guilty for feeling that, and then you don't really at all. At least that's my emotional reaction. Like that guy with the guy with the ThinkPad or whatever, and just had his Twitter underneath, and he would just write different messages. I just, like, I wanted to reach through the screen and be like, no one came here for you, bub.
Yeah, everybody tries to meme behind that scoreboard. But
that's what I mean, though. Like, this is the behavior that, like, isn't accepted in real life, but it is on the internet, but it's getting, like, diffused into real life culture.
Yeah.
Or, like, that squawk around the arena that all the Chinese fans were doing, like, when the Chinese teams did something awesome. It's just, like, weird cultural diffusion, right? It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, I always like to look through any of these things, whether it's growing pains or, like, memeing or whatever. Like, you can always look through it through the lens of other things. And, you know, we have these growing pains in other sports. And I know a lot, like, there's a certain contingent of the Dota fans and esports fans in general that really hate it when people like Nahaz, or I guess myself within this conversation, make the comparisons to traditional, quote-unquote, sports. But, you know, these things are it's just what happens. Like, to go back to Wazoo's point about, like, people sleeping on the floor training to be StarCraft players, like, in early American baseball and football, like, you joined a factory team and like you slept in a barn with 12 other dudes so that you could then take like, a awful bus that barely ran to play against another factory team like miles and miles away, and then you slept on another floor of a cabin or like in the middle of nowhere, and what, like, that's just the stuff that happens, right?
There was no internet back then. Like, people would do anything to get a good game, a good connection, Wouldn't you travel that far if you could, like, have a PC or something?
The ping was great.
Yeah, dude. The ping was, like, 0
I heard it was better than South Korea's.
Yeah. I mean, I probably would have died, like, 5 minutes into that walk, but, yeah.
You just instantly get, like, TB. Just like before you even play any ball.
But, so to tie it back to all to our earliest point where this conversation first began.
I like this so far, guys. Like, sorry about the tangents. Go ahead.
We don't have to be that show. We don't have to harp on drama and all that bullshit. But I definitely am not afraid to talk about it.
I think let's just experiment, see what happens, baby. Like, we don't have to we don't have to settle down and like
free love, man.
We can still go out clubbing and be a fun podcast, or we can stay at home and like put on some Doctor Who and snuggle up,
Yeah, and occasionally
either way,
bring
we can
another
do
random
both
person
things.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
You cool with that, right?
I mean, it is a very poly culture these days. Proud's friend Michael was telling me that. He's an engineer, and he's just like, dude, this place is crazy, Seattle, because everyone's like poly. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And he told me, and I was like, oh, interesting. That's that.
And you're like, I'm sheltered.
Yeah. I live in Utah. like every 2 out of 3 people.
You're like, I'm familiar with polygamy.
Just kind of similar in a way, but.
Polygamy,
yeah.
All right. So to any further thoughts as far as like what we envision getting into and talking about on the show, or do you think that conversation was a pretty good assessment?
I think that's a good example. I don't have any like catchy alliteration for like tangential Wednesdays, but I think at the end of the day, it's a show for us to discuss and discuss things that we may not talk about on other shows that are more regimented. And even potentially, like, I'd like to just have, like, listeners, like, shoot us a email at defenseofthepatience@gmail.com and be like, hey, you guys should talk about X. And, like, maybe, we could take viewer questions, or we could, do stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
if you want to call in, we could get that set up, too.
Don't do that. But, yes. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Like, that's what I would like to do. I'd like to get our listeners to kind of, like, talk about it as well. Because, like, there's a lot of games that me and Roland and Wazoo. Me and Wazoo talks forever.
Shit!
At the
You just
trip
call me
about,
Roland again,
different
buddy.
Games. I talked to Roland too at that trip for a little bit about it, because we were talking about like even like like doing something as simple as like playing D&D. Like we talked about that, and we talked about like playing like Pillars of the Earth, because like we were both like, man, have you played this game?
Pillars of Eternity.
Pillars of Eternity. Jesus,
yeah, it's
I'm
awesome.
all over the place. But that's the thing is like. Me, Wazoo, Roland, and Ursi, and Cyphus, and Proud, we all like do a lot of the same stuff, and we could talk about Dota for sure. Like, I don't think any one of us would ever have a problem with that, and we love this game for good reason. But is there anything else you guys want us to talk about?
I want to get a little headier, like not necessarily by like saying big words or dumb shit like that. That sounded a lot like Trailer Park Boys, but what I really want to do is like talk about things that we might think in our other shows that we might not think works there, that we can bring over here and then discuss, kind of like we did today with that whole discussion. I think we've all wanted to have the discussion a little bit, but it worked better here than it has in the past. So that's good. Like that means we found a good place for it. So I'm down to make this like a jack of all trades show.
But no, to continue with like Flubb with your point, yeah, I love the idea of getting listener feedback too.
Me too. I mean, like call-ins, emails, anything. We'll answer all of it. So
yeah, unless there's too much of it, and then we won't. But
I never have too much. We read it all.
I'm so behind on the emails. Ursi and I have been looking over an article that somebody tweeted at us. That's another thing that we might want to bring up here real quick. If folks want to start writing or developing content, just from within the .p community, definitely feel free to hit us up. But it was awesome to see that article. If you're willing to take the time and write something up and suffer through the wrath of Ursi and me editing it.
Yeah. I was not particularly kind. It was a great article. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but as somebody, I imagine I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like I'm in school to be a teacher, and I've done like student teaching and such. So I took my red pen out, that's for sure, and I did some editing. But I am more than happy to edit and read through and enjoy any articles written and potentially post on the site. Obviously, like, yeah. So that stuff's fun. Like,
Well, I should be getting mine to you guys here pretty soon, so, you know.
Oh, yeah, we've been hit up on Twitter a couple times about that.
I know what it is about, and I already don't want to post it. I don't want to be the
Or she's just going to be like, nope, I can't even grade this. Or, yeah, exactly, grade this.
You did not sufficiently address the requirements written on the handout.
So, all right, to wrap us up here real quick, because we got about 10 minutes left in the show. What any other big topic you guys want to hit before we start closing it?
I would say if anybody has a specific topic, go for it. I'd kind of like just talk about Dota. I mean,
I'm having a great time in Dota. Like, I really am. Great time.
And not like, I know this is going to be a wound for Flubb because he has not had a great time recently. But like, I've also had a terrible time in Dota now that I look at my recent matches. But like, I mean, I talk about we talk about like our strictly like what we've been doing recently on the Thursday show. So I suppose mine is less interesting because everybody will be hearing what my week in Dota has been like for tomorrow on the Thursday show. But like, Dota is just a fun game, and I've had some traumatic experiences in recent memory, like today, an Armlet PA game, which kind of gave me cancer. But
Did you lose to it?
Oh no, we lost. We lost for larger reasons, but
she got
on my
on your
team, we had a mid PA go
Armlet.
And
I thought you meant someone got Armlet.
What's the thinking behind that?
The thinking in large part is that you have that burst of extra health. So PA's inherent problem, right, is that you burst her down with magic damage until she has a BKB. And when you buy that Armlet for like 2,400 gold, 2,450, you can have that burst of whatever is like 400, 500 health, and that will prevent you from getting bursted by magic damage. That's basically the rationale. And like, you can escape by blinking away because you have Blink Strike. So that's kind of the thinking. And also, it gives decent stats, but the core issue with it is, A, you're spending all this money on something that is like, whatever. Like, it's mediocre at best. PA also accumulates a lot of items that take up spots, so she doesn't have like the room to have a 6th item Armlet. Like, she needs to have she needs to have boots and a TP scroll and an Aquila, and she's going to be building real items. Blightstone, yes. And the other thing is you have basically diminishing returns with the Armlet on PA, because one of the big draws of Armlet and one of the big reasons it was getting picked up so much in this recent patch is they buffed it, and now it gives 4 extra armor than it used to. So one thing Proud always brings up with Armlet Sven is, if you weren't building it before, why would you build it now, right? The only buff is just the additional Armlet, or is the additional armor, and you don't need the armor, so even though the item got buffed, that buff is not relevant to you. So PA has diminishing returns with the plus armor because she already has evasion, right?
Right.
So you're not getting that +9 armor or +5 armor, whatever it is in total. Against every attack, you're only getting that plus armor against certain attacks that hit you. So it's just kind of like a mess of things that you don't need, and it's like, I don't know. It's one of those gimmicky things. I feel like Armlet in general and a lot of heroes is very like, you do it so you can make those big plays with like Armlet toggling or like feel cool because you're doing a different build. But that doesn't mean it's good. It just means you're doing something weird. And more often than not, doing something weird is bad.
I have something to say. I have feelings for camera grip. Like, I've been using it, and like, holy shit, it's changed my life. I really enjoy using it. Yeah, do you use it, Ursi?
I do use it. I primarily use edge pen, but I
use both too, edge pen and camera grip. But I was making broad movements to just move a little bit, and I was like, what can I do? It's like edge pan, and I just barely flick it when I need to move it just a little bit now, and I don't need to edge pan all the way. So it's awesome.
It's great. I've always kind of cypreached, and not to completely cut Cyphus and Flubb out if you guys have points, but I've always preached that camera control is like the key to being better at Dota. And like somebody that is very mechanically skilled that has poor camera control, like Roland. I used to criticize Roland on stream all the time for his camera control, and it's gotten a lot better since I've been making fun of him for it. But camera control is super important. I made an entire video on it that's up on the YouTube channel .ptv1, but camera control is really important. So learning how to like use edge pan or accommodating, what's the word? I guess like accommodating yourself to different settings that are better will really help out your play.
I'd like to do a controls episode, maybe talk all of our controls.
Yeah, that'd be
sometime,
super interesting because I definitely just use edge pan. I don't use
almost all of the like I was about to say bad players, but almost all of the like lower tier players that ask me to coach them, the first thing I do is just watch the player's perspective, and it's without a doubt always awful. Like just learn how to control your camera, and you will gain 1,000 MMR.
So I feel like I don't want to say this, but at the same time I should. What the hell is edge pan? Like, am I
You
really?
probably have it on already, honestly.
It's just when you move it to the side of the screen, like Civilization. You know what I mean? Like you move it to the side of the screen and it moves for it. Camera grip.
I don't use that in Civ.
Yeah. of course.
Camera grip,
Like-
however, is when you hold on the center of the screen with the middle mouse button, you can still move the camera if you click it in. You know, it'll grab the camera from the center, and you can move the camera that way.
Yeah, the alternative is like moving it like with WASD. Like I've seen people that do that, and it's physically painful.
Yeah, it's weird to me.
WASD is actually really strong if you have like trained on that though. Like I there's no way I can ever switch back because I have way too many years invested, and like to get that extra little thing that you can do with it is not worth it in my opinion. To like retrain myself. So I hear what you guys are saying. I guess whenever I played, I start doing something new every time, and something that kills me is not like, I know you guys were talking about people not using their camera correctly. Not using control groups is like why do people not use control groups? It's been in there since like the existence of the game. There's a reason why control groups exist, because in RTSs that's how you like did things. You had to use control groups to be able to do whatever you needed to do to get done with the game. So you need to do the same thing in a game that's based on that game. Like use control groups for your courier, use control groups for your hero. It helps out.
That's the one thing I don't use a control group for is the courier, and I know I should.
There's just a courier button.
I just
You
have a
don't need
key.
control group
I
for
use
it.
my tilde key for my courier, so it's always bound to that.
Yeah.
Courier button is fine. I mean, I'm used to control grouping anyway, so like I just control group the courier as well. So
I feel like
I
I'd
guess
be
it's the same thing.
I feel like I'd be faster, especially because I what I frequently wind up doing is clicking on the fucking courier anyway to give it a command. You know what I mean? I might as well save myself the half second it takes to go down there and then just utilize the command.
Dude,
straight
my
from the
controls
controller.
right now are just when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. That's what it feels like when I play, dude. It's so comfortable and like natural to me and just
Control
fantastic.
groups are so important. Like my play, I always use control groups, but not recently, like a couple years ago, maybe 1 year ago, I standardized all my control groups. This was when I started playing Naga Siren a lot, and I was like, I used to do these, but like not, I didn't have them standardized across all heroes. So if you make control groups, it like programs them into your client, so it saves them like forever. And you can also make like standardized control groups, like I have like tilde is everything, and 1 is my hero, and 2 is all units that are not my hero. 2 is everything including my hero. 3 is all units not including my hero. Then like you can make specific illusion sets, specific hotkeys. So like my 4 button is on every hero is only illusions that are spawned by illusion rune, and 5 is all illusions that are spawned by manta.
That is
And
interesting.
the game sets things apart. And like on Naga,
It
you
saves
can set...
is what he means here.
Exactly,
Like if
it
you
saves.
play Lycan and you have Lycan wolves and you put 1 wolf to 2 and 1 to 3, every time you resummon that, it's gonna select those wolves right in that game. But
Unless
even
you
if you
mess it
come back into that next game, unless you change it, it'll
Yeah.
still be that way. It'll still be saved. So that's something good to know about control groups is like they learn with you. A lot of the controls, like if you just think about your controls and what you do, like it can really make the game a lot more enjoyable because it's a personal thing. But that's
it'll
an
take some
episode
getting
probably for another time.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm
Like that'd be
I'm
an
sure there's
interesting
more
to
we
do
can
an
get into.
episode on because I've watched like PPD's videos. I've watched like several controls videos.
It is interesting to see
Purge
everybody's
one.
controls. Yeah,
Purge also just made one. Yeah,
I use the home row for my abilities. ASDF for traditional for QWER. That's just because I type so I type like 120 words a minute, and so and my accuracy is pretty damn good, but it's all based off of that home row, and literally moving up just a row fucks with me so bad.
And you play on a plastic keyboard, bro. Like, you got to get a mechanical.
Yeah.
Did you learn how to type in like from school, where like they teach you like, all right, you sit here and you type from your home row?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See,
yeah.
I was always a little bastard growing up. Like, I never did anything someone told me to do, and so like I don't type with the home row because they were like, always keep your fingers on the buttons. It was like, fuck that, and I just did it my own way.
I don't know if high schools still have it, but like I enrolled in like a transcription course. Like,
yep.
And I mean, do they still have like straight up transcription?
It's different things now. It's like word processing in Excel.
Yeah,
like stuff like that.
Yeah, back then it was literally
you do like spreadsheets and
shit. It was just focused on transcribing and getting as fast as you could.
Yeah, I had that in like middle school, but it was just like it was like just a generic computers class, and like the first thing you would do is like, all right, they teach you how to type, and you do these programs, and like they gauge your speed. But like I was a nerd, so like I had already had good speed, and like I used the home row generally, but it wasn't like ingrained in me like, oh, I have to keep my hands in this exact position. That's fascinating.
It just fucks with me.
It's like
I'm so much faster at finding anything and everything if I just utilize the home row.
There's a certain amount of things, whether it's Dota or typing in general, that are like you can be more efficient by doing it, by making that simple change, but the hassle's almost not worth it. It's kind of like what people always talk about with Dvorak keyboards, which are the keyboards that are set, their keys are set up in a way that is more ergonomic, and all of the important keys are close to you, but nobody has those except for like, I mean, some people have them, yeah, obviously it's a thing, but it's not a popular thing, so people aren't used to it, even though it is way more efficient. Like, I forget what the exact numbers were, but people are like, yeah, somebody that types 60 words per minute, like, will type like 80 if they're trained on a Dvorak keyboard instead of a generic, like, typewriter-esque keyboard. Well, but that's the perfect example of, like, nobody's going to bother with that, because, like, what if you go to your friend's house? Like, there's all these hassles that are not worth it. Or
at work, or at the library, or literally anywhere you go at this point. I'll say now, after having played Dota for several years, I wish I would have just left it at QWER. I wish I hadn't changed it, because now I'm comfortable enough with, like, now I'm not thinking about, I have to hit A to use that spell. Now it's just, that's automatic. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I should have just
people describe things to you worse. That's an issue I have all the time, is like, if whether I'm doing coaching or just talking to somebody, I'm like, oh yeah, like, do a Baden's Q. And then they have to like translate that in their mind, like, oh, he means 1, because like they use 1, 2, 3, 4. Or
well,
whatever.
At this point, I still think of it. I still think of all the abilities as QWER, just because I have to converse about it on the podcast. Like,
that's good. A lot of people don't. It's very.
I've trained myself to like really study the names of the spells, because I've had that miscommunication way too many times. And like I'll be like, all right, use Q, and then they're like, and then it doesn't work in a team fight. So it's like, use Miscoil.
Q is my second item slot, so I use my 4 staff.
Use shield. Use this. You know, you got to be like descriptive with the spell to get people to. It takes longer, because saying use Q is way quicker than saying use the shield.
Somehow I've gotten worse at that. Like, Flubb, like, obviously Flubb and I play on a team together. When I, like, somehow, over playing more Dota, have lost the ability to recall names of heroes and abilities and stuff. So I'm like, oh, the guy, he's over there, the blue guy with the ice, and like, like, Sam, you mean Ancient Apparition? I'm like, yes, that's the one. AA, he's in
There's
top.
There's nothing worse than getting tongue-tied when you're trying to describe something that needs to be described in real time.
The truth is, Ursi, is you're an early onset Alzheimer's patient who isn't good at Dota at all.
Probably.
We create a false environment where you look like you're really, really good at Dota, but just for your self-esteem.
I had some really bad head injuries.
You're
so
like
maybe
1.2K,
that's like now impacting my Dota play.
That's why Roland could beat you, man.
It must have been. I was having like what's the word when when there's an earthquake, there's tremors like afterwards. Maybe I was having like the after effects of like post-concussive disorder or something like that, and that's how Roland beat me just on that evening. Or just because he bought raindrops and that item is stupid. I was listening to
that
Tuesday's show
item's
today, and
great.
you guys were talking about raindrop, and I was like, yeah, you better stop and talk about that.
You should have just played Winter Wyvern, dude. You should have played Wyvern.
Dude, I won't lose to anybody on Winter Wyvern that hero, except like Saksa or Seneko. But like Winter Wyvern is the god hero. If you're an up and coming support player on like an amateur team, learn how to play Winter Wyvern and like get your teammates used to it because that hero is very good. Flubb can confirm.
I can't. He's a good hero, but I think that like I wouldn't suggest that for other people to play. Like he has a potential of being really good in the right hands, but
Got to be like me. That's the better advice.
no,
You have to be like 1.4K.
Everybody be like Ursi.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to kill it here, folks, because we're coming up on an hour. I feel like that was a good first run at this episode, first stab.
It was fun.
People were like, "Yay, Wednesday show's back," and they're like, "What?"
Especially with that music.
So man, gotcha.
But yeah, this was a good time. I like that we're able to kind of take things a little organically, and I think we'll just get better and better at as we go along and do more shows.
Yeah.
So.
And give us your feedback. If you hated this, let us know why you hated it, or if you loved it, like also let us know why you loved it.
You just turned into like a transformer.
I hope it recorded that way.
Yeah. Me too.
Whoa! Everybody did.
Are you gonna do Pluggerino?
Yeah, I am. So if you want to find us at defenseofthepatience.com. I want to thank everybody who's helped us fill out the demographic survey so far. If you go to defenseofthepatience.com, look on the right-hand side, you'll be able to see that demographic survey. It helps us provide all that data to potential advertisers so that we can continue to provide you free content, improve the content that we have, bring in new listeners, grow the community, do more community events, more community rewards. Like we'd love to, I think Roland was talking about it on the Monday show. We'd love to do more on the in-houses on Wednesdays. So speaking of which, we want to plug the in-houses coming up this Wednesday tonight. If you're listening, it kicks off season 3. So if you're listening on Wednesday proper, tune on in if you want to join us. All the rewards, all that kind of stuff is done, not based off of like who wins or any of that. It's just about participation, who shows up. And at the end of the season, we do a random drawing and give away some Steam gift cards. So it's a lot of fun, and it's also a good chance to get your game casted by folks like maybe even Ursinity, maybe even Flubb, maybe even one day the Grand Wazoo himself. He says. So let's see. Also, follow us on Twitter at .p_show. You can find me at .p_Cyphus, Ursinity at Ursinity, Flubb at Flubb Dota with 2 B's, and of course at .p_Wazoo for the Grand Wazoo. Let's see, Patreon, of course, Facebook, which, as I've said before, gets updated before anybody else. So find us on Facebook and like us, and you'll know the instant the show gets released if you want to follow us there. I think that's going to be it. The subreddit, of course, run by Mr. Jay Gushi. Big shout out and thanks to him for all the good work that he does for us there. And, of course, find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and all your favorite podcast apps. So, I think that's going to wrap it. Until next time, this is Cyphus for Flubb, for Ursi, for Wazoo, saying good luck and Godspeed.